Hey guys, this is Beard of Darkness Book Reviews, and I have some really cool dudes. We've been talking a little bit before coming on. Hopefully, Brian D. Anderson will be here. Well, from what I understand, he likes to be fashionably late, so we'll stick with that. But for now, we have John Hocking and we have Scott Oden here with us. How are you guys tonight?
We're
Excellent.
good. Good.
Uh, so Scott, or I'm sorry, John's in Michigan. I love geology and culture and all that fun stuff. So John is actually really close to where my mom and dad grew up, and Scott is in Alabama. So just a little background. But we're here to talk about Conan, the Barbarian. Um, Tell us a little bit about what the Heroic Legends series is all about. John, if you want to start.
I can start off. What we have here is sort of a new wave of pastiche stories, which is, say, stories based on the work of Robert E. Howard. So most of them are stories about Conan. We're seeing them released as ebooks, Kindles, I think, from once a month for like the next year. This is the first time we've seen this much sort of pastiche action in years and years and years. So it's I don't know, if you like that sort of stuff, it's reason to celebrate. Monthly novellas, usually I think they go for like $2, $1.99. Easy access if you use Kindle, and an awful lot of material. It's so you got your various Robert E. Howard heroes, Conan. I think there's a Solomon Kane story from Jonathan Mabry coming up this month. I think there's a Bran McMorran story, an El Borak story, a story about Belit. So there's a wide variety of things coming your way if you're a fan of Robert E. Howard and like pastiche.
I love that. And Scott, do you want to give us a little bit about what you're doing as far as the Heroic Legends series?
Well, mine is actually a story that was commissioned for Marvel's renewed Savage Sword of Conan in 2019. It was originally printed a chapter in each episode or each issue for 12 issues.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it had a prose story in the back. After you get through with all the comic goodness, you can read the story. So this will be the first time it's gathered together in one place. So that, to me, that's how it should be. So
Liam's Lyceum. I know he's here. He says, "Man, some cool dudes to have on." I agree. I was telling the guys also. Yeah, he's wonderful. He's got a great channel. I'm kind of here with Charlie. Hey, gang, this is a new genre for me, so looking forward to expanding my mind. He's literally has been saying, or he said exactly what I did right before. I've heard of Conan the Barbarian. Obviously, it's not something that I've read up on, but I'm so happy that it's going to be something that I do from here on out.
Well, just make sure you get the original Robert E. Howard stories also, because you cannot go wrong with those.
Yeah, and if I'm right, if Wiki's right, that's like 1932 that he was in Weird Tales.
Yes, indeed.
Yep.
Wow, that's amazing how far it's come.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a character that won't go away. I mean, we could go on a long time about Pulp Fiction and Weird Tales, but a lot of the genre stuff you get today is direct descendants of stuff that appeared in the pulp magazines in the 1930s, 20s.
Yeah. Without Robert E. Howard, you would not have Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh wow!
Yes.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be the same thing. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. Appendix N in the back of the, I think it's the Dungeon Master's Guide, the original. Appendix N is like a who's who of pulp fiction.
Right on.
Wow. Sorry. Sometimes when I throw these questions up, John's face is going to be a little sorry. So John A. Douglas, an indie author of the Black Crown that's coming out soon. Thank you for being here, brother. He's been here since the beginning of my channel. I appreciate the heck out of him. Let's see. Yes, I do have a new background a little bit. I've used it a couple times. Thank you for being here, Bert. Let's see here. And Howard Jones, thank you for being here.
Howard.
Hey, Howard.
He says, Beard, I'll be working on my book release day video. Hey, you get to work, brother. I'm gonna tout the name from the top of my rooftop here. So maybe you covered it a little bit. So, but the both of you, starting with John, will you talk about what you're individually writing for this series?
Well, my story, just exactly what Scott said. My story originally appeared in 12 installments in the Conan the Barbarian comic back in 2019. It was great to be serialized in the comics, but that did sort of reduce the number of people who could read it because you had to have 12 monthly issues in order to get the whole story. So this is the first time it's available for everybody out there. It is a sequel to the Conan novel I wrote, Conan the Emerald Lotus. It stands alone, but the events in the story, Black Starlight, occur like basically directly after the events in the novel Conan the Emerald Lotus. So anyone who has that one, a Tor pastiche from 1995, reprinted, I think, in 1999. If anyone happens to have that old paperback, they can follow the characters a little farther. If you don't, you should still have a pretty good time with it, I think, if you're fond of Weird Tales style swashbuckling and interstellar horrors.
Awesome. Now, Scott, would you? I'm sure you've covered it a little bit. Will you, but make it solid? Like yours is the
Sure.
Part of the 12.
Mine is a direct sequel to a Howard story called "The Devil in Iron," and it takes place, several weeks after that story, and follows the characters from some of the side characters from the Howard story to see where they wind up after Howard quit writing them. Of course, the main thread is, Conan doing what Conan does, which is attempting to get revenge and make some money.
All right. Yeah, from what I understand, if somebody hires him to do some work, if you will.
Well, he makes himself the chieftain of a group of steppe raiders, kind of like the Cossacks.
I love that.
Yeah, so he's tangling with the Turanians, which are Howard's, I guess, Ottoman stand-ins.
Okay.
So the Ottoman, because everything in the original stories, or almost everything, has a historical analog to it. His Cimmerians, Conan is a Gael, basically. His Vanir and his Aesir are Vikings.
Ooh.
His Picts resemble Native Americans.
Wow.
I mean, it's
there's something in it for a little bit of everybody.
Yeah, it's a cross pollination of various historical fiction ramped up with intense swashbuckling and supernatural horror.
I love that word.
It's a riot. It's like nothing else.
See, he had trouble selling his historical stories that he was writing at the exact same time, and it looks like he just took all of the parts of his historical stories that he liked, threw some weird horror in there, and ran with it.
See, now I have this different, knowing nothing about Conan really, other than like what his rendition of him looks like, through various illustrations. That is totally enticing what you guys are saying, because I hear Conan the Barbarian and I'm like, okay, lives in a cave, maybe beating his chest, and that's awesome that I'm wrong. Not that wouldn't be fun,
Yeah.
but it's like my preconceived notion was a little off target, and I'm glad for that, because it's more interesting hearing you guys talk about the swashbuckling with a little bit of horror in it. I love that. So Book Mama asks, how many Conan books are there?
Well, let me step right in. As Scott said, if you really want to know Conan, you have to read Robert E. Howard's original Conan. Not watch movies, not read comics, not read pastiches, even my own or Scott's or anybody's. Read Robert E. Howard's fiction. The first book's The Coming of Conan the Cimmerians, Del Rey paperback. You can pick up here and there. There's 3 volumes in all, but that's the one you'd want to start with.
Nice.
There you
Scott's
go.
Got it.
Scott, as usual, knows what's up. Beyond
Scott
that, beyond those 3 books, there's probably 60, 70 titles that have come out since.
Yeah.
All from various folks down the many years, of quality all over the map.
Yep. And Howard only wrote 1 book length story about Conan.
1 novel.
Wow.
Yeah.
All
Hour of the
short
Dragon.
stories and novellas.
Yeah. Everything else. Yeah. Short stories. And I think there are 17 or 19. I don't remember exactly which that he wrote.
That's incredible.
19.
Yeah. So. Well, the character and the world he lives in are so strong that they literally couldn't die. That people read it and wanted more.
So my guy, I call him Sledge. We know his name is Nick Horvath. He's got a badass new book out called Sledge versus the Labyrinth. You got to check it out. But he says he was answering Book Mama. REH, Robert E. Howard's, only wrote 3 volumes worth of short stories, but 1 novel, like he said. But there are approximately 69,420 pastiche. Is that true? I mean,
No,
obviously
no,
it's
no,
not
it's
an
a
exact
bit
number,
of an
but
exaggeration.
he's being exaggerative, sure. But what he's saying is there's plenty of to get into if you find yourself loving Conan.
Yeah. See, John wrote the very last of what was called the Tor pastiches and Tor books back in the, what was it, the 80s, I think?
Yeah, just mostly the 80s up into the
Yeah.
early 90s.
They engaged a handful of authors to write, one of the authors being Robert Jordan of Wheel of Time.
Okay.
That's where he got his start, was writing, I think, 6 Conan novels. And he was also, I think, the series editor.
Wow.
Yeah, for a while. True.
Yeah.
So I talk about it a lot, but what's happening now is the reason that I started a channel, and that's to learn. Because I didn't start learning about fiction or really anything literary till I was like 29. I'm 33 now. So all of this information it's historical. It has a lot to do with the history of things has a lot to do with what's going on now. And I just think it's so fun. And I appreciate you guys being here. And it sounds like, John, you've been doing this for a while, and that's pretty cool. So I'm sure you've talked with Robert.
No, I never did.
Oh,
he was gone
okay.
by the time I began.
Gotcha.
Didn't get that opportunity.
You guys have got a similar foot in the same thing. That's really cool. Sorry, Scott, I didn't interrupt you.
No, I mean Howard. Oh, Robert Jordan. I thought you meant Robert. I'm like, man,
that's what I meant. Robert. No, not the original author. I meant Robert Jordan.
Yeah, but I can't recommend you read. Given what you just said and how reading is important to you now, you really need to dip your toe into Robert E. Howard's prose. Once you start to check it out, I think you'll probably it's almost a safe bet to say we kind of transported. He wrote incredibly vivid and intense driving stories. They grab you by the throat. They do not let you go. There's no one has spun yarns quite as intensely as this guy did. And if you haven't touched him, you got to give it a try. And don't miss it.
But don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself to just Conan either. He's got historical adventures. He's got weird historical adventures with Bran McMorn. He's got straight up horror. He's got westerns. He has even comedy. This man wrote something like 4 million words of prose.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's how he made his living. He was writing for the pulp magazines back then, and that's what kept the wolf from the door.
And this was in 12 years.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So that's basically what I've taken is there's a lot to read, but you have to read the first.
Yeah.
I can't wait. That's going on my Amazon wish list as soon as we get off here, because that sounds so enticing. And then looking at some more. And some Okie dude says, "Ooh, a REH fan, tell me more." And yeah, so they've been telling a lot. And John says something really cool. He says, when I was 13, my uncle showed me his Conan paperback collection. He read them voraciously during his time in Desert Storm. Conan was a big hit with the troops.
No surprise. No, yeah. I mean, it's powerful mythic stuff, and it brings it's resonant. It sticks with you.
Yeah.
And it's seriously at its best, and it can sound kind of hokey. I mean, Howard was capable of writing stuff that probably more so than most anyone else written in the 20th century that rose to the level of myth. It has the same sort of weird resonance that if you were like reading an ancient myth, it's that strong. I'll tone it down now so that my fandom
it reminds me a lot of Norse sagas. He has a dark northern thing to him.
Man, so I did some ancestry, and it only goes back to like my 5th great grandfather from Denmark. So anything Norse is like I'm so willing to read it, and I checked that out earlier. Yes, I wanted to tell you I'm very excited to read that, and I love discovering new gems, and I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to read that.
It's very Norse and very inspired by Howard.
Oh wow, I love that. So the badass book I was telling you about, Conan, is Sledge's #1 influence. I did not know that. And Conan being an influence to Sledge, I've read Sledge. I have to read Conan. I've touted his book.
when you read him, you'll start seeing the influence in other stuff that you've read already, because he has influenced, basically it's either him or Tolkien that have influenced the entire generation of fantasy writers now. Without Howard, you would not have Steven Erikson.
Ooh.
You wouldn't have any of these people.
Wow. See, this is what I'm saying. Learning this, because Steven Erikson is somebody that I look very much up to. And loving dark fantasy. I mean, you have to if you're loving dark fantasy. He's done something amazing, and if he's gotten if his influence come from, I keep forgetting his name, Robert E. Howard.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Ben says such an amazing output of incredible characters.
Yeah. Yep.
Admittedly, E.L. Montague, he's my moderator, does a wonderful job, by the way. My channel wouldn't be half as successful if it wasn't for him. He keeps me in line, if you will. Admittedly, I came to Conan through Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it was always awesome to me. I think a lot of people, we were kind of talking about this. Maybe this is a great time to speak a little bit about it. Thank you, Iron Age Media. Hail Conan. We were talking about there's movies, there's comics. Would you like to reiterate that a little bit more based on, he came in through Arnold Schwarzenegger. Can you guys kind of reiterate that a little bit?
Want me to take that, Scott?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's almost as if there's 3 or 4 different Conans, because the characters become so spread out over the many years. You got your fans of the film, your fans of the comics, your fans of the pastiche, your fans of Howard, and those that just like Conan in any flavor, in any style, in any format. And there's some like different versions of that. Some stick with one and only one. I'm pleased that I was pleased. I think the comics kicked Conan's persona, kicked Conan's fame out, and it made it more than just a collection of paperbacks. It made it larger and caught the attention of Hollywood. And now Conan's not going away. Conan's going to show up in various formats for the foreseeable future. I embrace all of it, though I have to say, I wish that those that were familiar with Conan in a dilute later format, comics or movies or whatever, would get a chance to read some Robert E. Howard. That's where it all began, and I think that's the most gratifying of all of it. It's the root and the foundation of all that Conan has come to be.
That's amazing. Anything else you'd like to say, Scott, about the difference, like the books, the comics, the movie?
Well, I've never actually read the comics except for Savage Sword. That was the only comic book I read when I was a kid.
I have all of them. So.
I have all the Savage Swords.
Yeah, right on.
I never read the main Conan the Barbarian. And
is this something that I'm into? It's like you find this really good potential in things that not much about, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to just be obsessed with something else. It's so fun. You're collecting the comics, and
I was 10 years old when I read my first Conan story. And I had swiped a copy of my brother's Ace paperback, the one with the Frazada covers. So if you ever Google, there we go, there.
Oh, nice, yes.
Yeah. See, now if you say Conan to people, I think this particular Frazetta image kind of leaps into the mind of a great many of them.
Now, is Frazetta a illustrator?
Yeah, he's the guy that painted this particular image.
Awesome.
Pretty much indisputably the greatest fantasy artist of all time, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a safe bet.
And
this is the copy my dad got me way back in the day.
Wow, that's
incredible.
It's an
old Conan because the edges are purple.
That's incredible.
I swiped my brother's copy of that and read that when I was 10 years old. And so I never, for whatever reason, I never picked up the comics. I like the Arnold movie. I don't think it's a very good Conan movie. It's a great sword and sorcery movie.
I like that because you're giving props based on your own experience with the books and the movie, and that's important.
Yeah, and I think Jason Momoa was actually a better Conan than Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I forgot that he did that. And I'm a huge Jason Momoa fan. I love his movies.
He nailed it, but he had a crappy script to work from.
The writers are so key to those movies, obviously, and I'm sure you agree with me with that. That you have to have somebody that knows the lore, the background of, well, in this case, Conan. So I wanted to get to this. REH Robert E. Howard did Otherworld cosmic horror better than Lovecraft. There, I said it.
Yeah, I agree with you right there. Yeah.
I can't quite go all the way there, though. I certainly love Howard's horror stories.
I figured there'd be somebody who's like, "Oh, hold on now, Lovecraft."
Yeah,
Which
that would be me.
which I haven't gotten to much Lovecraft, some Cthulhu, but not much more. I want to, but I'm kind of excited. There's this part of me. There's people I speak with, and sometimes I'm just like, I don't know what you're talking about. But there's also this side of me that's like, I have so much to explore. Like your first reads of this book that you had this amazing time with, like I get to have that.
Yeah.
So there's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, no, man. You keep learning. You keep opening yourself up to new things. This is great. It's to be celebrated, man.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. I think it's really fun. So I'm super happy to be here with you guys. So Howard's stories are a huge influence on me. Hail Conan the King. I love that. Legends of the Brave Bard. I think that's a great thing to say. And Bert, to your question, he says, Matt, can you post all the books when you post this so we can add them to our TBR? So as far as like, let me know further down the chats if you're still here. Is like the books that these guys are talking about. So there's one book.
Well, it's a 3-volume set from Del Rey.
Gotcha.
Starts with, so if your listeners just Google Del Rey Conan, it will pop up the very first search thing.
The first one's the Coming of Conan the Cimmerian, and I think the next one's The Conquering Sword of Conan, and I think the third is The Bloody Crown of Conan. But start with the first one. Start with the Coming of Conan the Cimmerian.
Cool. Yeah. So Howard Jones, he must be a pretty big fan. He's got it down. He's got it.
You need to read the Tales of Hanover. From Howard Jones.
Howard's a hot sword and sorcery property these days.
Oh wow!
He is
awesome.
in sword and
sorcery. You're here. So what's his book?
Crap! I just went blank on it. It's
Hang on a second here.
Yeah, he's got it.
I would love to know. I absolutely.
Oh, it's awesome. This. I have an ebook of it. I've been reading on. So.
Thank you, Howard, for being here. By the way, I absolutely love that. So, oh yes, I've seen that around. I have Lord of the Shattered Land.
Lord of a Shattered Land. That's volume 1. Excellent stuff. Showing influence of Howard, but very much its own beast. And its sequel, Howard's The City of Marble and Blood. Each one's better than the other one.
That's amazing.
It's a love child between Robert E. Howard and Harold Lamb.
Which is pretty accurate.
Yes.
Now, a lot of the BookTube channels I follow, I have seen both of those books. I am so happy to put a face to them now.
Yep.
One of them, Nick from I can't remember the name of the BookTube channel, but I watch him a lot, and he's all about the sword and sorcery. And now I putting 2 and 2 together. Matt's fantasy book reviews. Let's see. Matt Bisley writing on his notepad. Notes to self. Interview Howard Jones. Dude, oh my gosh, he knows me. He already knows it. Howard Jones, I'm coming after your DMs, brother. So I love the conversation we're having. It's so not for me. I'm just learning so much, almost like an overload. So I am writing like I'm literally just jotting everything down as we go. So I know you, well, in this case, the two of you, there was going to be another guy, Brian D. Anderson, because he's also writing a story for the Heroic Legends series, and it comes out soon. I'm not exactly sure when. I'll have all this information because in the descriptions, I'll gather all that after we're done talking. But there's some other authors involved. Only one that I can think of that stuck out was Stephen Graham Jones, or Stephen Graham Jones, right?
Yeah. He wrote Conan, Lord of the Mount, which was the first. His was the
first one that came out.
Books, and that one, it's already out. That came out September 26th.
Okay. And then, are there any other authors involved in this right now?
I got a list I'm looking at right in front of me right now. Yeah, there's plenty others coming up later this month on the 28th is Jonathan Mabry's Solomon Kane story, The Hound of God.
Okay, Jonathan Mabry.
Yeah, he's got the Joe Ledger series. He's the current editor of Weird Tales. Weird Tales back in the, I think this was as of 1928, published arguably the first sword and sorcery story ever, Red Shadows, that featured Solomon Kane. So there's a pretty cool symmetry to see like that current editor of Weird Tales writing a Solomon Kane story. I'm psyched to read it. The absent Brian D. Anderson has his Conan story, Conan the Child, coming out December 26th. Scott's Conan Shadow of Vengeance is January 30th. And then we've got Stephen Shrewsbury's got a Brand McMorran story. V. Castro's got a Belitz story. Who else is on here? Michael Stackpole's got a Conan story. Laird Barron has a Conan story. So
is there a centralized website or space we can go to kind of sum all that up?
I think there's on the Heroic Signatures website. I think there is a full list. I just snagged this off the web somewhere and pasted it. So yeah. I don't know exactly where I got it.
So I'll definitely find that link and put it in the description.
Conan.com, I think, has it.
Conan.com.
Yeah, it ought to be there.
I feel extremely unprepared for this, and I really did my research, fellas. At least I thought I did.
It's vast and complex, so it's all right, man. It's all good.
I found that to be true.
Yes.
So yes, some Okie dude, Stephen Graham Jones did a Conan story in the Heroic Legend series.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look it up on Amazon, it's a Kindle original. Cost you $2 to read it.
There it is. Yeah, I think I looked Brian's up and tell me if I'm wrong. It's like $1. It's like $1 per story or something.
Yeah, $1.99.
Super cheap. $1.99. Yeah. And John Douglas. He's interviewed. I didn't know this. Howard is a damn good author, and I loved our interview. Look at that. Go read books, my buddy Matt. He says I had no idea that Conan's stories were still being written. Brother, I'm right there with you, but guess what? I'm so happy that they are because I can't wait to dive in. Isn't it crazy? And I'm kind of speaking at Matt because we started our BookTube channel at about the same time, and he can read much more than I can. I have 3 toddler boys and a newborn girl. So my reading time's like after I do this, and then I go to bed and like read for an hour, and that's about it.
I'm amazed you're here now.
Yeah. My wife, she's taking care of the newborn right now.
God love her.
Everybody who watches me normally knows this, but yeah. So awesome that we're getting Solomon Kane and Brack McMorran too. Can I have some context for that?
Okay, Solomon Kane is Robert E. Howard's Puritan Avenger, taking place in an actual history. They're dark adventures of a driven Avenger. Great stuff. One of his earlier characters. Scott, you want to take Bran McMorran?
Oh, Bran McMorran is the last king of the Picts of Scotland, and he's fighting the Romans to keep the Romans from pushing into his land.
I have to put this up because this is one hell of a compliment. These two guys are 2 of the best Conan pastiche writers ever to appear in print. How does that feel, guys?
Thanks, Mr. Jones. Thank you, sir. Yeah, that's nice.
Thank you for saying that. I do feel lucky to be here speaking with them.
Let's not get carried away, Howard.
No, I think that he's got to be right because you guys know a whole shit ton. Sorry for the French there, but you guys are quite versed in what you do.
My wife wanted me to add that you need to read the Dark Agnes stories. That's her favorite Robert E. Howard character, Dark Agnes de Chastillon.
Now, is that part of Conan?
Nope, it's a separate character from the late Middle Ages.
Awesome.
Okay, so
she's being forced into marriage, gets pissed off, and goes and forges her own path.
Nice.
She loves those stories. She just texted me to make sure that I remind her.
A really, really solid female lead character from Howard, writing in the 30s. More power to him. Those stories are those in The Sword Woman, that Del Rey collection called The Sword Woman?
Yep.
All right.
Yep, they're all in that. Mm-hmm.
This is gold. This is going to be one of the interviews that I go back and watch just to make sure I got everything. Yeah, you do, but most of his historicals are among his very best.
Yeah.
What's the context to that comment?
At the same time that he was writing Conan, Howard was writing a series of historicals set in the Crusades, intended for a magazine called Adventure, which I think was the highest paying and most distributed pulp of its time. And it was, I think, more of a slick magazine. And he could never get broken into them, but he would write. He wanted to write historical fiction, but it didn't sell, and he couldn't break into the markets that paid well enough. So that's how we have Conan: is take that love of
Wow.
historicals and shift it over to this his most his best market at the time was weird tales, but weird tales had to have weird horror, weird adventure.
Okay.
So
E.L. Montague says, "Isn't she Milady in Three Musketeers?"
No,
probably. I don't think so. But
no, it's a totally different era, totally different character.
Yeah,
Gotcha. And
she is more of the Ottoman, like as the Ottomans are pushing into Europe, she's in that era. So.
Awesome. Charlie, I agree with you, brother. Oh, the poor TBR. It's always that. It's like, we're going to die, and I'm going to have
that's okay. That's okay. You could have worse vices than buying some books, man. You know it's true. You know it's
always
true.
buy more books.
Had those vices.
Yeah.
That's why I switched vices. It went from some terrible stuff to this.
Yeah, this is way better.
Yes. It's funny you say that, because I've actually said to my wife, I said, look, based on my history, I have changed my course of action and what I buy in a much more positive direction. But I buy lots of books because I love them. So,
I used that same argument with my mother when she told me I was buying too much Dungeons and Dragons stuff. It's like, okay, well, I'll take this $20 and go buy crack. She's like, no,
exactly. And she's like, oh, no. The board games are fun.
Yeah, here, take your money, go buy some more. Have fun in the basement.
I love that. Let's see. I want to make sure I get my questions over here, because it looks like I'm missing some. Red Agnes is France. I don't know. Maybe the context to this isn't. So how old? I'll go to a different one. So how old are the Conan stories? There seem to be so many, I'm having trouble following along.
The original
showed up in the 1930s in Weird Tales magazine, in a pulp magazine at that time, written by Robert E. Howard. Since then, a number of people have carried the saga on. Again, the most important ones are the Howard ones. But since then, the saga has been carried on. There was new ones that appeared in the 50s, the paperback boom of the 60s that basically codified the saga, the Conan saga, in sort of a chronological set of stories. And I think 12 volumes, I think. And then since after that, all through the 80s and into the 90s, they published a chain of novel-length pastiches by a variety of authors, me included, about the character. And after something of a dry spell of, I don't know, maybe almost, 15, 20 years, we're finally starting to see new ones by other authors. So, yeah, there's an awful lot of Conan, but it all goes back to Robert E. Howard.
So I'm looking at, and this is where I got some of the information before coming on with you guys, was the wiki page. And let me tell you guys, this is fantastic. The wiki page is just filled with so much information. So, there's a lot of information coming at me as well. If you're confused, well, watch this over again. Of course, I'll have to say that first. But also follow up on the wiki page, and I'm also going to have like heroicsignatures.com. Is that what you said it was? Heroiclegends.com?
I believe we'll have to get back with you on that. I should know that. Yeah. I don't know that off the top of my head. Conan, the new site Conan.com should have it, right? Conan.com.
Yeah.
Conan.com. That's another good place.
I just revamped that site, so it should be on there.
But for your readers or for your listeners, start here. This is the one you start with. It's available on Amazon. Your local bookstore will have it. They did a wide variety of printings of it. Start with this. If you like these, pick up the other two.
Awesome. I love that. So there's your answer. Bert, I believe that's that. For is Conan the Barbarian a character that you could what is the age range that you say they could pick that first book up from the Robert E. Howard?
Depends on how precocious the kid is, of course. There's
Yeah.
The language can be fairly lush. There's an element of sexuality in it that's muted by modern standards, but it was warm for the 1930s. And there's a steady stream of violence. Actually, at the time, the violence in it seemed strong enough that people sometimes objected to it. It was pretty graphic for the era. By modern standards, not so much, but it's pretty intense stuff. I would imagine officially, like if you would ask a librarian, they'd say the kid should, a reader of say 13, 14 probably would be totally prepared for it.
Okay.
They could go younger. And of course, there's no upper end. You could read it till the day fall over.
Dennis Thornton says he first read it at 14.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you've read modern fantasy with the granular violence, it's no worse than some of the young adult stuff now. So
that's a good answer, because a lot of that young adult stuff, it's like, wow, I can't believe that's young adult. But most of it, I can understand it. Nick Horvath, if you ever read his book, he loves the steady stream of violence. So it doesn't surprise me that he threw that up there.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that caught my attention to Conan when I was also very young when I started reading. I'm not going to tell you how young I was. This book was new when I started to read it. But one of the things that caught me to it is that it was just that violent. The villains in Conan stories tend to be pretty horrible people. And, they get what's coming to them and then some. And I found that very satisfying,
Okay, so there's not just a bunch of nonsensical violence happening for no reason. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no. Well, all the violence has a reason. So
yeah. I love that, because, I read these books and I usually DNF them. I have to say that. If there's a bunch of I like a grimdark book every now and then. It's like I can't read nothing but grimdark or dark fantasy. You kind of messes with my frame of mind. But if I'm reading a grimdark book or a dark fantasy book, and it's just all shock value and there's just no reason for it over and over again, I'm probably putting it down, because I'm not trying to corrupt my brain with that kind of stuff. Not that I don't love a violent book. It's usually the sexual stuff, the violent sexual for no reason kind of thing, which I don't know. It just kind of takes its toll on me, and it gets awkward, and I just have to put it down. So to know that there's a reason behind what happens in Conan just makes it all the more attractive to me personally.
Yeah.
Now, Nick also,
if you've only seen the movie, like the Arnold movie, the prose Conan is going to seem completely different. He doesn't show up as just some fur diaper wearing shirtless oiled, muscle man. He wears attire appropriate to where he's at. So, he doesn't have just one sword that he carries around with him the entire time. He's a master of all different
periodically to pose.
I love that. So he's a master of disguise, or a master of getting along with.
No, he cannot really disguise himself very well.
He is a consummate survivor, though. He's gonna
That
he's
makes
a lot
sense.
smarter. He's a lot smarter in the book than what they showed him in the movie.
Wonderful. Book Mama 87 says, to write Conan stories, do you have to get permission from someone, since you weren't the original creator of Conan? That's a great question.
Take it, Scott.
Yep, you do. Both John and I were approached to write the stories for the Marvel comics that we appeared in by at the time, a man named Frederick Malmberg was the copyright or the IP holder. And now he manages the IP for Funcom. So they have everything trademarked. So in order to appear legally, like on Amazon, you have to have their permission. So he commissioned us, and then Titan bought the rights for more fiction. So Titan got everybody else involved.
That's cool, because a lot of you always kind of wonder, okay, the legal side of things, because if somebody's watching, like, oh, I love Conan, I'd like to write in it. It's not as easy as that. You have to get your permissions from the right people, and people make sure if you were to ever do something like that, you get your permissions, because there's some things that could happen, like getting sued and whatnot, right?
Yeah. Well, John he approached this pre-internet. This was back in the dark ages, when you had to send snail mail to get permission from people.
Okay, so you had to write him a letter and say, hey, this is the reason.
I did the stupidest thing conceivable, by which I mean I sat down and wrote an entire novel about Conan without ever asking anybody about anything. And then when I was done with it, I was like, well, do I put this in a drawer and write it off as therapy, or do I see if someone might want to read it? And so I questioned a handful of people, was directed to Conan Properties, asked them if they wanted to see it. They said, look, guy, we don't accept random Conan novels, but we'll look at it. They looked at it and they liked it. And there we go.
Wow.
That was Conan the Emerald Lotus, the strangest story. Most my fellow Conan authors often are sort of surprised at that one. That's a weird, that doesn't usually happen. And I'm eternally grateful for that.
I tried to do that with my first novel. I wrote my first novel planning it to be a Conan novel. But by the time I got it finished, they had stopped doing Conan novels.
Oh.
So I had to. Oh, I stripped out everything Robert E. Howard, set it in a historical setting, and sold it to a small publisher.
Yeah, and it's a ripping yarn too.
Oh, thank you.
Only the truth.
That's super cool, because that's always kind of like a part of things people don't get to see up front. So it's nice to know from people who are actually doing the thing what it is, because like I said, people often ask that kind of question, and it's like, well, I'm not sure, but here we go, people. This is the truth.
Well, people will say that it's public domain. It's public domain. What public domain means is you can reprint the story as it appeared in Weird Tales. It doesn't mean you can add more to it, because it's covered by trademark. So Conan the Barbarian is the comic character. The prose character is Conan of Cimmeria.
Okay.
So both of those are covered by trademark. So if you publish something at Conan of Cimmeria, that Funcom's lawyers are going to come for you.
So that's good. I've had an author on here, and I won't name names, but he thought that, so he really looks up to like Cthulhu from Lovecraft, and he's like, you can write about him, he's in a public domain. That's not true.
No, H.P. Lovecraft released all of his creations to the public.
He's a sort of an exception, isn't he? Yeah,
yes, he is. So he created himself the Lovecraft mythos and invited other authors to add to it. So you can actually write a Cthulhu story.
Okay.
And
so he was right in that sense, but not anything in the public domain is able to be added to.
Yeah, you have to really do the research as to what is and what isn't.
Yeah, it's almost a case-by-case basis. It's really complicated.
It sounds that way. Bert, I'm really trying to do buddy reads in my Discord. I'm having a hard time just because I don't have the time to put towards really. I'm using my time for the best, in my head, the best things that I can do, and that's really tell people about the books rather than tell them my opinion of them. Now, when I have more time, I want to do that. I just respect what authors do and the hard work and dedication that they put into these wonderful works of fiction or nonfiction, whatever it is. And that's where I think my calling is at the moment. But I'm really trying to find the time to also do like buddy reads, the occasional review when I can. I've got a lot of promised reviews that I'm trying to get to. So like buddy reads, and that, thank you for saying that, Montague. If we want a buddy read, we can work something out. I think that if, Montague would want to do the buddy read part of the Discord, I think that would be something so awesome if he has the time. And I want to, like I said, it's just at the moment with the newborn, it's just really hard. So yes, I do want to do that. Real quick, What kind is there a variation in I'm sure there is because it's all individually published, right? Your writing style, John, is different than Scott's, or do you guys find a lot of similarities between Conan authors, or are they just a lot different?
Well, I think each author approaches it a little bit differently. Scott's approach is probably the closest attempt to mirror Robert E. Howard's actual prose style. This is true fact. Others will do their own tack. You'll find some that are like very more tersely written that don't sound like Howard at all. For my own part, like I can't write like Howard, so I take my normal writing style and I sort of ramp it up and try to intensify it, make it more colorful, more vivid, more speedy. Everybody does it a little bit differently, and I think from the public's reaction, I think they're willing to accept stuff that doesn't sound much like Robert E. Howard at all, provided it still rings true as Conan.
That's amazing. What's your take on the different writing styles, Scott? Maybe talk about yours.
Well, I mean, like John said, I actually attempt to mimic Howard's prose. And I've done this for so long that it's actually became part of my normal style. So everything I've written echoes Howard.
I love that. That's so cool to hear from the author himself. Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, I sat down when I was learning how to write with the same Ace editions and typed out the stories as they appeared. And as I started getting my own ideas, I would add to it. And then I burned them because I did not want anybody to see what those were. But that's how I learned to write was because that's at the time, this was the 80s. The wisdom of the day was you write like somebody you admire. And when you start to feel your own style, you start using your own style. So me and a manual typewriter sat down and started typing out. The Thing in the Crypt was the first one I did. It's the very first story in the Ace editions, which is not actually a Robert E. Howard story. It's an L. Sprague de Camp story. So
that is so cool. I absolutely love that you sat down with a typewriter, a manual. That's awesome.
16 years old.
Look at that. That's gold. That's gold because we all have like those ambitions, and then there's a starting point, and those are important. That's foundational. That's a stepping stone into what you are today.
Well, I think that's 20-something years to actually perfect it enough to be published.
I think that's amazing.
It was something. It was a journey.
I'll bet. Was it fun? Was it worth it for you?
I think it was. To me, I would not want to do anything different. The world changed a bit, and writing isn't what it used to be. But deep down, I don't really regret any of it because I've got 6 books I can look back on and go, hey, those are decently written. So
I love that. That's so cool. What about you, John? Anything? Are you happy with the way things have went for you as a writer?
Yes and no. I mean, I recently retired. I devoted much of my time to my career, and so I didn't write anywhere near as much as I'd like to. I've written a small fraction of what Scott's written. Stack of short stories, a couple novels. Now that I'm retired, I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone.
He also has written the best short story I've ever read.
What's the name of it?
Vestments of Pestilence. It's available at blackgate.com. It is hands down, even more than the Conan stories. It is one of the best short stories I have ever read.
Nevertheless, you should probably get your expectations down a few notches from what Scott just said. But yeah, it is available online at Blackgate, Vestments of Pestilence. That's a pretty good story. Of interest to me right now because that's a story about the characters I'm currently writing a novel about. So,
and I want that novel.
Excuse me?
You got a fan in him.
I want that novel.
Okay, I'm 400 pages in, man, and it's at the big epic climax, and I feel like the guy that climbed up on the high diver board and walked out on the end of the board. I'm about to leap off, and I'm kind of scared now because it all has to tie together and explode in an appropriate climax, and so I'm a little wobbly right now, but I'll get there.
That's amazing. I have been there. You guys. That sounds like I mean, go figure, a booktuber who wants to write, of course, but I do. I want to write what you, Scott, have written, like a Norse esque,
Oh yeah.
just kind of like gods of war. Like, uh, I really
Just a
like the.
balls out Viking story.
Yes, really, it is. That there you go, balls out Viking story. I love the look of it, the feel of it, the lore, the mythology. I'm reading a little bit at a time. I don't. Oh, Norse mythology and tales.
Dude, have you read The Long Ships?
The long ships.
Oh, you need to read that one.
That's the greatest Viking novel of all time, and I
Ooh,
can say that without hyperbole. I don't think I don't think too many people would argue with me.
I will now.
Is it by Bengstrom? I think it's Beng
Uh,
Strom.
I think so. I got it
Oh
somewhere
man.
right nearby, but I can't see it. So
Oh man.
We have so much in
those,
common, guys, and this is the first time we've spoken. The long ships is wonderful. Howard Jones. I have
close
to
second
trust
will
that.
be yeah, a very close second will be Oath Sworn by Robert Lowe. So
This is the most I've ever written during a live ever, hands down.
Yeah, it's by Franz Bengtson. Bengtson. Yeah,
oh, he's Danish too. So
yeah,
it's an in
I'm
translation.
naturally full of hyperbole, but I think I can pretty much safely say that's the greatest Viking novel of all time. Yeah, if it doesn't knock you over, you probably don't like Viking novels.
Oh, I
And they
can't
made a
wait.
movie out of it in the '60s. Also, there was
Yeah.
Ooh,
I don't
I
remember
love
who
a
was in
good
it.
vintage movie.
It doesn't bear a whole lot of resemblance to the novel, but it's still worth watching.
It's got the
There's a
name.
reason they call it adaptations, right? We're never like, if we've read the book first, it's always just that it's an adaptation.
Yeah,
Um,
an homage.
so yeah, exactly. So we've kind of answered my last question. Are the stories you're telling in reference to a particular point in the Conan story? Where do your stories take off as far as the heroic legend series? Are they like a play
I'm
on,
curious, like where in Conan's life the story takes place,
or like if somebody's familiar with, I guess me not being super familiar with it, it's not a very good question, but if is there a particular storyline where yours picks up?
Well, when I started to write about Conan, I looked at his entire life as I'd read about it and tried to find a place to insert a story that hadn't been written
Okay.
about much. And this is like he's like, I guess mid to late 20s, is just coming back up from the Black Kingdoms, where following the death of his pirate queen, love of his life, Belit, and goes and becomes like a mercenary in the kingdom of Sham, right? And I just took that little space. It's about a year, I figured, that no one had really written much about, and I plotted out a handful of stories I would tell in that area. And this is way back when I was writing Emerald Lotus, so we're talking like in the 90s. I figured all that out. So I haven't done much beyond that. That little patch is where I'm writing Conan stories.
What about you, Scott?
The one that I've written, actually, I've written two Conan stories. One of them is not in the heroic signatures line for some reason. I wrote the tie-in for Conan. Oh, it's a Conan video game.
Was it Unconquered?
Yeah, Conan Unconquered. That's it. Thank you.
You guys compliment each other pretty well.
I've known him.
Really well.
I haven't actually met John. I've known him for several years online.
Yeah, a good long time.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And we have a mutual friend, Howard. So
there you go. John lives where I want to be most of the football season. He's in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He's a huge Michigan Wolverines fan in me. So that's awesome. I'm jealous. It's such a beautiful town. I've been there once for a Michigan Ohio State game, and the people just were so friendly and amazing. I live in Ohio, so you can imagine how the Michigan love goes over
it's easy for me to imagine. I mean, I grew up outside Detroit, and I came to Ann Arbor for when my dad had a booth at the famous Ann Arbor Art Fair when I was just a little guy. And I thought Ann Arbor was the coolest ever. I went to school here, and then I never left. So it's a nice city.
So you went to main campus?
What's that? Yes, I did.
Oh, wonderful, man. What a wonderful college that is. What a prestigious college, too. Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't expect that. Nobody's ever in the place where it's usually like I'm speaking with somebody. I live close to Columbus, actually, so I get a lot of flack about my college team, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
being so close to Columbus. But is there? We're kind of reaching the end of what I've got to ask about, but I would also like to extend what I usually do at an end of an interview. For you guys to talk about literally anything that you want about when your stories are coming out, anything. Is there anything else you'd like to highlight?
I should jump up and shout about my forthcoming stuff. If you've heard, we've talked about Conan the Emerald Lotus, published long back in the 90s, hasn't been available really since, unless you're buying a used book. It's going to be reprinted along with its sequel, which has never been printed before, although it was written immediately after, Conan and the Living Plague, which almost came to print twice. One time it was printed, and then the whole print run was destroyed because it turned out so poorly.
Wow.
So it's, in theory, these two books will be bound in one volume. The volume, it'll be called Conan in the City of the Dead, and it appears June 18th, 2024. So coming up this summer, in theory, all my Conan novels should be available once again. Cross your fingers. It's looked that way before.
Love it. What about you, Scott?
Let's see. I got the last of my Grimner saga comes out December 19th, which is The Doom of Oden.
Yeah, guys, I read about this before coming on, and it just sounds amazing.
Yeah. This is what would happen if Robert E. Howard wrote Tolkien's Orcs.
Oh, man.
Vikings.
That's definitely pretty about as close to home as you're going to make it. That's a good one sentence pitch,
Scott. Scott's Twitter handle is Orkwriter.
Yes.
So I knew I was going to get along with him right there.
I have an unhealthy affectation for orcs. I don't know why.
So I don't know if John's still in here, but John often asks this question, and I hope I'm saying it right. He says, "What is your favorite fantasy race, and why is it orcs?"
Exactly. Why?
Oh, that's wonderful.
The thing that I had trouble with, though, is I did not want another book where it's just an orc, just a human in an orc costume. All the other orcs I read, it could just be a person, So I wanted him to have his own set of morals. And by human standards, he has no morals. He is as amoral, as filled with hatred as you could imagine. But if he gives you his word, he doesn't break it. And that gets him into all kinds of trouble. So he rarely ever gives his word.
I wanted to put this up here. Nick says, no, go ahead. He says, yes, I've been waiting for that sequel forever, John. That's so awesome. Can't wait. Emerald Lotus is so great.
Thanks, man. Thanks for waiting. It's been a long time. But again, cross your fingers.
And I have to say this. I think this is the first time my father popped in. He's not a big book reader, but thanks, Dad, for hopping in. A great interview, Matt. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Pops. I appreciate that. But yeah, after speaking with you guys, not only have I learned so much, you've kind of created this fire in me to go find out more about Conan. So we've got a couple things accomplished. You've got somebody who wants to go check out Conan for the first time. And then you've also let everybody know about what's coming out soon. And I think there's going to be some people who are really excited. So I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. We'll get a hold of Brian and say, what the hell, man? Right? So you put this together, brother, and you didn't even show up. That's all right. His book's coming out as well. Would you guys mind plugging that real quick if you know about it?
Okay, yeah, hang on. Like I said, I had the information right over here. Conan the Child by Brian D. Anderson lands on December 26th. So it's your late Christmas present. I'm looking forward to reading it. I haven't read a word of it yet.
I still need to read Conan and the Mount. I've not read that one yet. The first one?
Stephen Graham Jones, Lord of the Mount.
Stephen Graham Jones, yeah. I read his essay on Robert E. Howard, and that was like some really awesome, touching stuff. So,
well, that's awesome. I really appreciate you guys giving all this information. Yeah, that sounds really cool. And he's usually like a horror writer, really in the horror genre. So it sounds
very much acclaimed for that too. So it's cool that he'd do a Conan. He's a high-profile guy these days. Great to see him doing Conan.
Several of the writers are very high-profile, like Stephen Saville. He wrote a series of books with Brian, but Stephen Saville wrote like Warhammer books. He's written thrillers. He's written multiple names, and they got him to do. I think he's doing Bran McMorn. Is that? If you still have the list up, John, it's Stephen Saville.
What is? Hang on a second. Bear with me one moment. Where is now? Stephen Shrewsbury is doing Bran McMorn, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, that has the most awesome.
Saville's doing a Solomon Kane story, much like Jonathan Maybury. Okay. That's not coming until June. Solomon Kane, The Banquet of Souls by Stephen Saville. Yeah. And then in August, we've got a Conan story by Laird Barron, arguably one of the most acclaimed horror authors of the past several years. Cool to see what he's going to do, too. So it's an exciting time to be a Conan fan or a Robert E. Howard fan, I guess.
I love that. So much wonderful information. Jen Hocking says, nice interview. Great to see you. So enthused about these writers. And I was going to say, that has to be a family member. That's so cool. So tomorrow, guys, I'm talking with John Minton from Talking Story and Beth Tabler. And she is a reviewer for Grimdark Magazine and Before We Go blog at 9 p.m. with Beth. I'll get back to the time with Talking Story, John from Talking Story. But I'd just like to thank you guys again for hanging out and just really teaching a booktuber a lot more about what I had no clue about and hanging out. So I really appreciate you lending me your time.
Yeah, it was nothing but a good time, man. It was great.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
100%. And I would always again. So I'll be following you guys a lot more now. I'm glad to have met you and anybody who showed up and will watch this in the future. Thanks again. And we'll see you next time.
Right on. Thanks all.